Okay, it looks like we are live, and Jeremy is making a silly face.
I always do. That's
That
how
is
I
true.
that's
That,
my intro. That's my shtick.
that's how you roll? Is by
That's just
making
what I
silly
do.
faces?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, Jeremy, it is good to see you. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing pretty good. You do anything interesting this week?
Week was work as always. This weekend got a lot of stuff done. Got to spend a few hours playing Skyrim today while my wife and my daughter were out and about. Meant to work on some stuff for D&D, but I just had to finish some side quests in Skyrim. I couldn't help it.
Yep.
Yeah, how about yourself? What'd you do?
We had a karate tournament and then I played paintball. That's all I did.
Oh, nice. Now you get to talk to me. I mean,
Yep.
that
Now
just
it's the
caps
two of
off the
us.
week. Yeah, and special announcement actually this week coming up on Tuesday. It's going to be mine and my wife's 14th wedding anniversary.
That's a big number.
It's a big number. It's almost a decade and a half. I don't know how she's put up with me. So,
Uh,
well, everybody, I want to thank you for joining us this evening. This is the other side of the die, and what we do here, Jeremy and I talk about how you can have more fun and less drama at your gaming tables. We do stream every other week at 8 p.m. on Sundays Eastern U.S. time. And you can reach us on our socials that are on the screen. Usually I go ahead and read them out, but I figured why? They're down below. You can just see them for yourself. But Jeremy, what are we going to be talking about today?
yeah, so today we're going to be talking about how to have a great TTRPG experience for new players
Yep.
coming into the scene.
Yeah, awesome. Man. It looks like in the chat we've got some people in there. So, oh, Cheryl likes Skyrim. So, awesome. Skyrim does rock. So, but I have to say really quickly, Skyrim's going to be set aside once the Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild Tears of, or not Breath of the Wild, but Tears of the Kingdom comes out. So, can't wait for that one, May 12th. So, all right. Sorry for the interruption, Jeremy. Let's get into it. So, yes, we are going to talk about how to make TTRPGs, tabletop role playing games, great for first time players. And just to dive into it, Jeremy, my number one rule whenever I have new players at my table is I never explain any rules to them. And the reason why is because they don't know what they don't know, right?
Yep. Yeah,
Um,
100%.
yeah, I mean, actually, I don't think it really depends on the TTRPG game. You can have the most streamlined game, and it's still a lot of mechanics. It's still a lot of rules. They don't know what they don't know. What I prefer to do is I just explain the rules as we're going. I have them tell me. I explain the situation. Have them tell me what they want to do, and then I say, okay, well then you need to do this. How do you handle that, Jeremy?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm pretty similar. I might give a quick rundown before we start, uh,
Hmm.
especially if they're really new. Like, hey, these are the different kinds of dice. I'll typically tell you. I play a lot on virtual, so it's like,
Hmm.
hey, in order to roll stuff, a lot of times this is what you click. It makes it super easy. So I do try to give at least a small rundown so it can be a little bit smooth as we kind of jump into it.
Yeah, and actually, you bring up a really good point I didn't think about when we were talking about and planning this stream. But you have double the job as a GM or DM if you're playing virtual for two reasons. Number one, you got to explain the game, and number two, you got to explain how the virtual tabletop works.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
really do. And that's something that I try to tell people as well is like, hey, you'll get the hang of it. You'll get the hang of the game and you're going to get the hang of the virtual tabletop. Don't be frustrated that you don't know everything right off the bat. It's new
Yep.
to you.
Yep, absolutely. One of the reasons I also meant to add this in here, the reason why I don't explain rules up front, and one of the reasons why I explain as I go, is because I feel like that when you're explaining a rule or a mechanic or whatever they need to do in that moment, then they've got some context, right, to
Yeah.
understand that mechanic. So if you have somebody who says, I want to search this room, for a secret door. Or if you have a new player that says, "Hey, I want to search, this desk," for maybe a false bottom or something. Well, I'm going to go with D&D 5th edition because that's what I run right now. Then
Yeah.
obviously I'm going to say, okay, then what you're going to do is you're going to make a perception check, and then I explain to them what the perception check is for and how they do it on the virtual tabletop.
Yeah, and right now in Pathfinder 2 that I've been running, we're all kind of new to the system, and one of the guys just got full plate mail, and I kind of told him what it does, but I was like, so full plate mail gives you your armor as well as it
Hmm.
has a benefit where you take reduced slashing damage, as well as if you have a reflex saving throw, you get to add in some of the armor to a reflex saving throw. And it's like that's so much just for your armor that I'm like,
Hmm.
hey, this is really good armor for you. When we get to it, I'll explain
Right.
because it's just so much.
What you just explained there was already making my head
Like,
hurt.
yeah, exactly. It's a lot.
It is a lot. It is a lot. Now, what do you do for characters for new players? Do you have them go ahead and make a character? Do you make a character for them, or how do you handle that?
Yeah, so a lot of times, what I really like to, and we'll talk about this a little bit more, is I
Hmm.
really like to set up a one-on-one session, especially if it's their first time making a
Hmm.
character. And I will sit down and I'll try to ask them a few questions. Hey, here's a couple classes. What sounds really interesting to you? What do you think you would have a lot of fun with? And then one of my big rules is if it's your first time, no spell casting.
Yeah, yeah. You and I had talked about that. Let me get to the spellcasting here in a little bit because this was a big topic for us. Because
Yeah.
so what I do for characters is I will usually ask somebody. Well, I mean, like you, I don't have them make a character because again, they don't know what they don't know. So what I'll usually do is I will ask them. Um, if they're already into fantasy, like if they like Lord of the Rings or Narnia or something like that, I may ask them, hey, what type of character do you want to play? Because they're already kind of somewhat familiar with, oh, I want to be a
Yeah.
fighter, or I want to be a wizard, or I want to be a rogue. But then if they don't really know fantasy, what I may ask them then is like, okay, what kind of movies do you like? What kind of action movies do you like? Do you like Marvel, for example? Because if
Yeah.
they like the Avengers, I may ask them, okay, who's your favorite character with the Avengers? Okay, well, Captain America is my favorite Avenger. Okay, well then think about playing a fighter, or maybe even playing a paladin. Or if they say something like Black Widow's my favorite character, what you might want to play could be a fighter, but also might be a rogue as well.
Yeah.
Just depends.
Yeah.
If they like Thor, straight up fighter, straight up fighter.
Yeah.
So
I do see that where you're trying to basically connect them into something that they already know and understand
yes,
into a class. Also, I think
right
Thor would be a great barbarian.
there you go. That I didn't even think about that one too, but yes, right. But then wait a minute. If we're gonna go with the Avengers,
Hmm.
wouldn't the Hulk make a better barbarian?
I think they both could because if you had Thor, there's like the elemental
Mhm.
one where you can do like elemental damage when you're raging, and that
Right.
seems really Thor-like to me.
That is true. Okay, I could go with that too. I was just thinking purely from the raid standpoint of the
Oh yeah,
barbarian.
oh yeah,
I mean, hulking out just kind of made sense here. But yeah, and then once they decide on what kind of character they want to be, I will usually try to have first time players just play a human. It's the easiest one for them to connect to. But then, of course, I'll give them some leeway on picking their class. Now, let's talk about the spellcasters.
hold on.
Let's
I
come.
got to
Go
jump
ahead.
in on the
Okay.
races. So
Okay. Go
one of
ahead.
one of the guys I play with, the first race that he decides to play as was an orc. And hey, Captain, thanks for
What?
joining us.
Oh,
So yeah,
absolutely.
the first one he played as was an orc, and it was kind of like, oh no, this could be kind of weird. Oh my gosh, this guy absolutely slays as an orc. He uses this really amazing voice and everything for the orc.
Hmm.
Fantastic job role playing as an orc, and so uh yeah, I do see why more often than not you would want somebody to play as a human, but
Hmm.
I think it what gets them the most excited about playing if somebody's like I really love Legolas. I feel like a lot of people they watch Lord of the Rings and that's who
Right.
they want to play, so
Right.
they're like I really want to play as an elf. If you see that excitement, I'm gonna let you play as it.
Yep. Yeah, and again, that goes back to the classes. I mean, if they're already familiar with fantasy, like Lord of the Rings, or again
Yeah.
Narnia, or something like that, then absolutely. If somebody really likes Legolas, then okay, yeah, absolutely, okay, play an elf. Okay, if that's a character, absolutely that you like. Um, Spellcasting, because I really want to talk about this one because
Yeah.
you and I were on almost on the same page with this one. But I want you to go first and talk about what you restrict as far as spellcasters for first time players.
So if you're playing with me and it's your first time playing a TTRPG, you're playing a martial class. I think spellcasting, how many spell slots do you get? What do the spells do? Are you a prepared spellcaster? Are you a flexible spellcaster? There's so much that goes into spellcasting that it's
Right.
kind of the whole reason you don't explain mechanics, you don't know what you don't know. The second you add spellcasting into it, all of a sudden you have to learn 7, 10, 12 spells, depending on what level you're starting at. And
Yep.
it just gets so complicated that they're going to be burnt out just from trying to learn their spells.
I agree with you on that one. First level playing a wizard or a sorcerer, in D&D, I'm okay with. Okay, because at first level you don't have that many spells that you have to choose, and I can explain the mechanics of spell casting. Now, when it comes to clerics or druids, I strongly, 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 strongly recommend that first time players do not play either one of these classes. And the reason why is because you get access to the entire repertoire of spells as a cleric or as a druid. And if you think it's confusing having to pick between 4 and 7 spells, now
Yeah.
all of a sudden you've got to look at this expansive list of spells to try to choose these spells that you have.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's very confusing on top of the regular mechanics for the game.
100%.
Yep.
I was gonna say, any of you guys in chat, any of you have any rules on first time players? Do you allow somebody to be a full spellcaster, a half spellcaster? Let us know. We'll try to comment on what you guys are saying.
And I'd also like to know for people in the chat, what do you think about what Jeremy and I have said so far? And the reason I'm specifically asking this question is because I think Cheryl's first character was a druid.
Yep.
And here
Yep.
I am saying that first time players should not be
Mhm.
playing druid. And as soon as those words came out of my mouth, I was thinking to
I know.
myself,
I
wait a
was thinking
minute,
about that.
Cheryl played a druid for her first character.
Yep.
So yeah, interested to see what folks have to say in the chat. Cheryl's just laughing at us or laughing at my comment. Yeah, it's true. So, yeah, we did practice. We all did.
Yeah.
Jeremy and I did when we did a live stream a while back for my other channel. Yep, absolutely. It was fun. It was fun. So, Jeremy, why don't we do this? Let's get outside of mechanics as far as classes and as far as races and all of that. Um, Go back to doing the session 0 one-on-one with because you said because when we were planning for this, you said you do a session 0 with the entire group, and then you'll do a one-on-one with the player.
Yeah, if they're a new player, even if they're not a new player, sometimes I really like to try to do a one-on-one, like pre-session 0 to really narrow in what a
Mm-hmm.
person is wanting to see from my game and stuff like that. One of my players was actually in the chat, but I don't know if he's still around. So a lot of times, and he's actually one of the people that I'll bring in every once in a while, is if I'm having a one-on-one, especially with a new player, I may bring in one of my veteran players to help out. And I think this does a lot of really great things for the game. If they're a new player and I bring in one of my veteran players to help them build the character, I think it kind of lets the veteran player get invested in this new person and the new player, which I think is
Yep.
really great. And then it also builds a bond before we get into the game where this new player is already kind of leaning on the veteran player due to that relationship that we've already kind of built up a little bit.
Yeah, it's one thing I never really thought about doing, by having a veteran player, helping out the new player, in a one-on-one. Regardless whether it's new players, regardless of whether it's experienced players or it's just new players, like you have a completely new group, not new to role playing games, but new to you. as the DM, you absolutely want to do a session zero.
Hmm.
Absolutely want to do a session zero to level set with the players. I was looking at Captain in there, and he said he likes playing the rogue personally, and even that can be complicated. Um, yep, I'm looking at his
Yeah,
other comment
yeah.
here. Okay, he said he's done that before, especially when he was a new player himself. Captain, are you talking about being a new player, or are you talking about being a new DM?
Sounds
You're
like
for
sounds like both. But
okay.
kind of touching on that, I think the session zero is so amazing
Yep.
because it kind of, you should use it if you've already set up the campaign. You can say,
Mm-hmm.
hey guys, here's a lot of the details about the campaign that we're going into. Like my current one, it's called the City of the Damned. I'm like, there's going to be a lot of undead, so be forewarned that's going
Right.
to be one of the lead monsters that we're fighting. It's going to be in the city. I gave them some background on the city and the country that they're playing in. And so that really helped them when they're building their characters. If you do a session zero and then you make the campaign, it kind of lets you know, hey, this is these are the topics that these players really like. I'm going to write a campaign that incorporates a whole lot of that.
Gotcha. Okay. Makes sense. Makes sense. Um, when I do a session zero with a new player, or just uh, even with a new to me group, um, overview of the mechanics. Especially for house rules that you may
Mm-hmm.
have in the game, and we're going to do a stream coming up in the future about mine and Jeremy's house rules. One thing I think is very important is table etiquette. Um, Especially when it comes to well, when we're talking about table etiquette, it's what's allowed, what's not allowed. We talked about this in a past stream. For me, one thing that's big with me is, as the person running the game, is don't spend a lot of time arguing with me about one of my rulings. I will
Yeah,
give you a
don't do that.
chance. Yeah, I will give you a chance one time to make a statement, and then after that, please let it go. So these are all very important things to go over with a new player. I feel like. Um, and then one point you had, which I thought was very interesting here, looking at our notes, and I have to say to my shame, I don't think I've ever done this, is that you check in with a new player a couple of days after the game session and just find out how it went. I mean, what do you include in that conversation with them?
Yeah, a lot of times I'll been like, like, hey, it was your first time. What'd you think? Uh, what'd you really enjoy? Like, did you really like combat? That's typically gonna be the one that I hear the most. I
Mm-hmm.
really liked combat. That was amazing. Or, you do get the person where it's like interacting with the other people and just like the limitless on the possibilities you can do.
Right.
But really trying to figure out what they really enjoyed, which is going to help you in the following sessions. They really like this. Let's try to focus on that for the next couple sessions to really get them to enjoy the game.
Yep.
I'm also going to say, like, hey, what'd you find really frustrating? Was it just not knowing the rules as well as you would like, or was there something else that may have been frustrating you about the game? Uh,
Go ahead.
I was going to say the other thing that I do like to do is I not only check in with my new players and how the game went as well, but maybe after session 2 or 3 with a new player, I will typically check in with all my veteran players and say, hey, what do you think of the new player? How are they doing? I want to check in with my veterans because that's my core group, right? If
Right.
they're not having any fun, then we're going to have to discuss it as a table, like, hey, what are we going to do because not everybody's having fun? These are the reasons why we're not having fun. Most of my veteran players, if it's just because somebody doesn't know the rules, that's never going to be the issue. But if the new
Mm-hmm.
player, I had one new player who they found out that the rogue was pickpocketing gold off of dead bodies and not splitting it up. So they heard this at, like, we're playing, and they knew that the rogue was doing that, but their character didn't. Their character was playing as a cleric, and so what they decided to do was when that person needed healed, the cleric said, "You owe me 50 gold if you want to be healed." And the rogue's like, "What?" And he's like, "Well, I know you have it, so you need to pay me it." And it's like, "Well, how did you know?" So basically, he felt entitled to the gold that the rogue was going around and getting, and it started a really toxic behavior, and basically he wanted to share regardless of what was going on, and it was like, hey man, you're just a little too toxic for our group, like, and we tried to fix it, and then the next session was like kind of explosive with him like basically being upset that we talked to him about it. It was like, all right man, sorry, this isn't the table for you.
So a new player was upset because they, as a player, knew about the rogue in the party looting gold, but not sharing it with the group. But their character didn't know. So number one, they were metagaming,
Yeah.
and number two, they were getting upset about fictional money.
Yep. Yeah. And it was really, really bad. Basically, anytime any information that the character wasn't there for, he
Right.
basically just wanted a piece of everything. And yeah, it really toxic behaviors. We talked to him once and then it got really bad. So we gave him the boot.
Right.
I would stress, unless it's a really explosive interaction, always try to talk with the people, see if they can fix their behavior and continue to play with you.
Right.
Uh, Give people the opportunity to surprise you.
Yeah, with a lot of things in life, Jeremy, I have a three strikes rule. And with a new player, to the group, it's three strikes, because after the first one, just like you said, we're going to have a conversation. Okay. I'll have a conversation one on one with that player. And then after the second strike, it's probably time to have a conversation with the entire group. And then let them know, listen, you got one more chance, dude. It's three strikes. And
Yeah,
then
and
after the third strike, but the thing that's really important is, you can't. And I had a training class this week at work where I talked about this. You can't hold people accountable for behaviors or for expectations rather that you never set.
yeah, and I would agree with that. And the
Mm-hmm.
biggest thing is as the DM, even if you're a new DM or if you're an experienced DM or anything like that, a lot of this is going to be, if you're the DM, you need to protect the fun at the table. I do think that is part of your job as a DM.
Mm-hmm.
So if I love new players, I love teaching this hobby to new people.
Yep.
I love it. I've taught a whole bunch of people how to play this game and I've really enjoyed it. But I do need to protect the fun of everybody else at my table. So if
Mm-hmm.
I talk with you and if you're just a grade A butthole, I'm going to kick you out of my game.
Right. No, I get it. But again, I mean, it's a three strikes rule. But I think it's just very important for new players. To your point, give them an opportunity to correct, whatever behavior, is coming up. And listen, you just explained that you are not a fit for this table.
Yeah.
I mean, there are tables out there that would be a good fit for you. This particular table is just probably not the one for you. Um, One of the things I also do, especially if I have an owner group, because my current group right now is still relatively new. Well, I say relatively new. I really can't say that. We've been playing for a couple of years, but we only play once a month. So I say they're relatively new because we're on our second campaign together. The first campaign I took them through was a starter set, The Lost Man of Endover. And I explained to them, I said, guys, this is pretty much your training campaign. I'll take it easy on them. With new players, I take it easy, up to right around third level. I may not
Yeah.
play the monsters as tactically and strategically as I could play them. I may forget that the monsters have certain abilities just to
Yep.
take it easy. I'll
Oh
allow new
yeah.
players to metagame a little bit because again, they don't know what they don't know. So I
Yeah.
want them to have a good experience for the first time, and it's going to take them a while to get the hang, of the game, and how that works. But what I told my group is, well, because we're currently playing Curse of Strahd, and when I told them, at the beginning of Curse of Strahd, I set clear expectations for them because you have to do that for, especially for new players, but you should be doing it with all of your players. So at the beginning of every campaign, I always come up with what I call a player's Bible, and it lists out everything for the campaign, the premise of the campaign, the lethality. I think that's how Is that how you say that word?
That sounds right
Sure.
to me.
Okay.
Cheryl will correct us if we're wrong.
That is true. How hard the campaign is. I let them know with Curse of Strahd. This can be a pretty deadly campaign. What races are allowed? What classes are allowed? So the bottom line is, my point is that you have to set expectations. As a good DM, you have to set proper expectations for the players. And again, just take it easy on new players. Going up to around third level. I may even go up to fifth level and still take it easy on them. Depends on how often depends on how often you're playing. All right.
Little chit chat there in
Oh,
the
that's okay.
chat with the
All right,
Cheryl
I'm just
room.
looking to see what you put in the chat.
Yeah,
Um,
so just kind of a follow up on going easy. So something that I feel like I've always done the whole time I've always been a DM is I try to kind of match what the party is doing.
mm-hmm.
The more tricky, the more clever that the party is, the more I can do that with the enemies because that's kind of what they're doing. Like when I was younger, I never had a string, right, go around camp with a bell on it. I never did that to my orcs, bandits, and stuff like that. But then my players, one of the groups, they started to do that. Every time they set up camp, they had a bunch of bells and they would run twine around their encampment and hook it up to bells. So if somebody snuck in, it would ring the bell. And I was like, that's genius. I love it. And now that you guys are doing it, now the enemy can do it. I
Sure.
don't instantly do stuff like that. So I let them do it for sessions. This may have been 2 months of them doing this before I started having enemies do it as well. But it's
Yep.
like, if you guys are smart enough to do this, other people are smart enough to do this.
Yeah.
Uh, give them the edge for a little bit, but then, yeah, try to meet your players on their own intellectual field. I think that makes the game really interesting. Uh, as an experienced DM, I could definitely set up traps enough to kill my players.
Right.
That's not, but it's not fun, right? Like just TPKing isn't fun. But if they're setting up traps for enemies, that's fun. And if they're experiencing traps every once in a while, that's
Mm-hmm.
fun as well. So it's really trying to find a balance of matching what your players intellectually are doing in the game and
Yep.
matching that.
Yeah, I like the idea that what you're talking about there, that if the players are doing something, like you said, putting the string with the bells around the camp, as a rudimentary alarm system, not doing that right away because especially with new players, why are they playing this game to begin with? Number one, they're
Mhm.
playing because they want to have fun. Number two, because they want to feel like powerful heroes. So let them feel that, for a little bit, but then explain to them out of the game, like you said with your players. Okay, keep in mind that now that you guys do this, the bad guys get to do it as well. It all goes back to setting proper expectations for new players, um, for first time playing. You have really, I just cannot stress that enough. Setting those expectations is hugely important.
Back
Uh,
in second edition,
mhm.
it just makes me think. One time, my party figured out that they could, and second edition is drastically different than fifth edition.
Yep.
They figured out that if they cast Entangle, everybody would be stuck in basically Tinder, and then if somebody else cast Burning Hands or something on the Entangle, it would automatically hit everybody in there, and then the entanglement would catch on fire. So
Yep.
it would do like additional damage. And so then they were like figuring out all these spells that they could combo together. And they were having a blast like comboing spells. It was great. Up until they got to a boss who then comboed a spell on them, which before then I'd never had enemies do it. And like
Hmm.
their expressions when the enemy comboed a spell on them, it was amazing because they're like, oh
Hmm.
my gosh, they did it to us.
So let me ask you a question here, Jeremy, because what's your opinion on my method of taking it easy for new players from third, maybe up to fifth level? Because I've read online of some DMs who know they will kill a player's first character as quickly as they can to get them to understand how lethal the game is.
Yeah, so I had one player that the very first thing that he did is they're walking. There was this, they had a really hard combat. They're level one. He had,
Mm-hmm.
I think he was a ranger, and he had 1 hit point left. He had 1 HP.
Mm-hmm.
And they're setting up camp and they didn't have any food. So he's like, I'm gonna go hunting for a deer. And he ended up going out into the wilderness to hunt for this deer, right? And he rolled like multiple ones, and I think the deer ended up like charging him, or it may have been a wolf or something that he encountered. But basically, this like small creature came out and did 1 damage to him and ran off. And he only had one hit point. And so he was just out in the woods hunting and got downed by an animal, and nobody knew he was out there, so they could not rescue him. So I have killed uh more than a few first time level 1 players.
Yeah, but look at what the musical rogue just said in the chat.
Yep.
It's different if
100%.
you make stupid choices.
Oh
He
yeah.
had 1 hit point left and he went out
Yeah.
hunting.
Yeah. I was not going to pull that punch.
Yeah,
Yeah, it agreed. It's not just to prove, it's the whole concept, and I'm pretty for sure in that situation I told him how dangerous
right,
going to hunting with 1 hit point was, because if he's hunting animals, he's not guaranteed to find what he's looking for,
right.
and you're
Well,
by yourself, so don't do that.
well, I'm
But
looking
yeah,
at.
I
Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No, go ahead. Finish your thought.
uh so I was gonna say I've had plenty of I had one party pick a fight with the town's guard. It was newer players. The veteran was like, "This is a bad idea, guys," and they picked a fight with the town's guard, and they lost. I don't know how to pull punches from the town's guard when you start that fight.
Right. Yeah. Um, and again, I mean, yeah, I mean, just like what the musical rogue was saying. I mean, Stephanie makes stupid choices. Her comment though about, but I think
Mm-hmm.
it's rude to kill a player just to make a point. She was saying that in response to what I was saying. I've read online, and I've actually known
Yeah,
DMs who will kill a player right up front, so they understand the lethality of the game. So there's that word again. I'm trying to actually pronounce correctly, and I'm not even sure if I did. But honestly, I just think that's messed up.
yeah,
I
100%.
get, I understand. I think with my method, I run the risk of getting the players in too comfortable of a zone where when, I take the metaphorical kid gloves off, I run the risk of them going, hey, what's going on? Now all of a sudden the game just amped up in difficulty. But I will say, going back to setting expectations, I
Yeah,
always tell new players, I'm going to go easy on you. And I remind them often because you need to learn the game, you need to learn the mechanics. I want you to have fun. I will go easy on you for your first few levels. But there's going to come a point when you should know the game,
yeah,
and then
and
I'm going to play the bad guys
yeah.
smart.
But kind of what on the music road is talking about here.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely, if a DM does this, that is a massive red flag to me.
Yep.
If the whole point of the game is to have fun and you kill my character to prove a point of how dangerous the setting is, I'm not going to play in your game.
Yep.
As a DM, the main point of us playing is to have fun. There needs to be risk, and I do get that. But if you kill me just to prove a point, and I tried to play as safe as I could,
Yep.
and I could, as a DM, I can tell when you specifically killed me to prove a
Oh
point.
yeah.
I'm not going to play in your game anymore.
Yeah.
That's a terrible thing. That's a terrible way to play.
Yeah. I mean, it's easy to tell when a DM is out to do that because they either target that specific character, or after they're down, because let's face it, intelligent bad guys, you're facing a party of heroes. One goes down, you're not going to keep wailing on them. You're going
Well,
to
I
go
do.
take, well,
I
but
coup de
what?
grace. I
Okay.
coup de grace my players. If my players go down, I have enemies coup de grace them all the time.
Well, see, I play it that they're going to go out there and try to get rid of the remaining players first. I mean, I guess say, okay, I want everybody watching to understand that I'm a nicer DM Jeremy.
In my last session, they were fighting an ogre, and the wizard got downed because he got crit by this undead ogre. And the ogre, the next that he had a second attack, so he downed him with a crit, and the very next punch was boom, straight to the ground and punched him again. So two failures. Yeah,
Wow.
I think it to me it makes the game so much more intense where it's you better fix the problem right now or he's going to do that again.
Right. But then again, okay. Let's stay on this for a little bit.
All
Okay,
right.
because I talked about it being intelligent bad guys.
Yeah.
Okay, but let's think about, let's use your example of an ogre, because an ogre is pretty much driven by any, you know,
Mm,
non-intelligent brute. Wait a minute, but here's the thing: the way I look at ogres is they're pretty much driven by hunger.
yeah.
So I could see them downing a player character and then hitting them one time just to make sure they're unconscious
Yeah.
and then dragging them off.
Yeah.
Okay?
100%. I
Right.
I very rarely would I have a creature just sit there and like pummel. Now, I have had one of my players got completely killed. He was a rogue. He snuck off and he
Mm-hmm.
flanked the enemy when the fight started. And then he failed his stealth check trying to creep up. And there was like four goblins over there and they were low level. So he got in a fight with the four goblins all by himself. And he got downed and then he killed one goblin. So it was three versus him. And they just stabbed him to death.
Okay, well, I mean,
They
I could see that.
Yeah,
I
they
mean,
didn't hear the combat going on with everybody else because it was so
right,
far away that it was like this is way over here, everybody else is way over here. So when they
right.
downed the player, they just shank.
Well, I mean, let's face it. I mean, we're talking about goblins. I mean, they're savage little shits, right? So, I
Yeah,
mean, that's what they're going to do. I mean, they got one player character there. Yeah, they're going to just keep shanking him until, yeah, they're dead. So I guess, let's relate this to my original point. Go easy on the player characters. Keep
yeah,
reminding them at some point the kid gloves are going to come off, and then play the bad guys that makes narrative sense. If you're
and
playing soldiers, okay, they're not going to keep wailing on a down character. They're going to
no.
go. They're going to go take out the rest of the player characters. If it's an ogre, they'll probably do what you said: down them, punch them one time just to make sure they're out, and drag them off.
And I think some of this in when I DM, one of the things I really try to focus on is creating a bunch of tension.
Mm-hmm.
So if I think and we could have an entire episode on fudging numbers, right? So if if that's what I have to do to create a tense situation, so I know as the DM that I downed the player and my next punch was downed him and he's got two crit fails. It's now on him to roll the dice or somebody else to heal him to bring him up. But I know personally that the ogre was not going to go for him the next round. It was going to go to the next target, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the players don't. So it creates this super tense moment of, oh my gosh, we have to save him or the ogre could do it again, even though I know it's not. And I really do think it's up to the DM to create these tense moments, but
Yep.
understand when and how to do these kinds of things and not basically, abuse the players for your own enjoyment. Don't do that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, because just like we've seen in the chat, because I liked what the musical rogue said in one of her comments. But even then, you aren't out to just kill them. You're there to facilitate story and give a challenge. Challenges are meant to be
Exactly.
dangerous, but they aren't intended to intentionally wipe a party. And I think she was saying that in response to my comment about going easy
Yeah.
on the players up until for their first few levels. You can still challenge them, and to your point, you can still have tension in there. You
Yeah.
know, you can make it seem like, hey, one of us is going to die, but then you just kind of, and this takes experience and nuance to be able to get to that edge
Yeah.
and then pull
Hey,
back.
yeah, yeah. And that
Mm.
is what all DMs want to try to get to, right? You want to get the players to the edge and not go over it. And you want to try
Right,
to ride it for a little bit.
right.
I totally agree. And just kind of touching on challenges, or like fudging dice and stuff like this. I think fudging dice for the enemy to make the combat harder, as a DM, you should totally do it to help the party as well every once in a while. If
Yes.
you see if the paladin crit and drops a whole bunch of damage into the enemy, say the enemy had 80 hit points and the paladin just hit him for 60, he has 20 hit points left, just kill the thing, right?
Right.
Why let it survive with the
Yeah.
it is a more amazing moment to let the paladin kill the creature in that point than it is to smite him really, really, really hard. And now the creature's somewhat like limping, and now we get to watch a couple people like stab him a couple more
Hmm.
times in this really uneventful play out of the rest of combat. So yeah, it a lot of times I will fudge enemies' hit points. If you are one hit point away and the combat's already really, really close and it's really tense, I'm gonna shave that one hit point off and let you kill him. If it's a really easy combat, I may add one hit point on to give that creature one more round to try to create more attention.
Yeah. I have done that. Where they're down to one or two of the bad guys, and if you just keep rolling dice and playing this out, it just becomes a slog. It just becomes an absolute slog. So to your
Yeah.
point, take care of the combat. You know what? I've done it where bad guys, it's like, all right, bad guy's got 2 hit points left. All
Yep.
right. There's two of them left. It's not that narratively important of a combat,
Yeah.
and it's
Absolutely.
down to two guys. All right, guess what? Bad guy just went from 15 hit points to two
Yep.
because we're gonna wrap this up.
Yeah.
Now, if it's a narratively important combat, or if for some reason, for narratively speaking, I need the combat to go on a little bit more, I'll be honest with you, and any of my players watching right now, I'm about to reveal one of my secrets. I have been known to add on hit points to bad guys.
You know what? When the cleric walks in and holds person, and then the entire party auto crits for 300 damage, and you're just like, great, fantastic, thank you. Yeah, I didn't know an orc spellcaster could have 500 hit points. Well, they
man,
didn't until you did that.
man, this
Uh,
town guard, he is tough, man. He's just taking it.
yeah, so on. We can have an entire episode on fudging, but I would definitely say if you're gonna fudge
Yo,
hit points. Don't fudge hits or misses.
no,
That doesn't feel as good.
no.
Adding more HP or less HP to an enemy is the better way to correct the combat.
Yeah, I actually agree with that one, and we're kind of getting off topic because
Yeah.
because this was something I was going to say for our house rules, episode. So, um, let's talk about one point you said here, Jeremy, which I think was good, and relate this to first time players, but giving players goals to help them improve as a player.
Yeah. So something that I like to do, especially with my new players, when I do that check in on them, right? I'll check
Hmm.
in with them, especially the first few sessions. After each session, I'll give it a couple days. I'll try to reach out to them, and we kind of talked about that. But something I will try to do is I will try to give the player something to improve on. Hey, you're doing amazing at your combat. Let's try to work on your role playing next session and see if we can start flushing that out for your character a little bit. Or I may say, hey, you were kind of I was trying to help you a whole lot on the actions that your character can do. Try to read over your character sheet a little bit before we play next time and see if you can better understand what you can and can't do. Um, I like to do that with new players, but that's not just a new player thing. I will typically meet up with my veterans pretty regularly as well and say,
Mhm.
hey, you've gotten pretty rusty at doing this specific thing. It's typically going to be more technical things for my veteran players. Like one of my players makes a lot of goals for himself, but he recently hasn't been making a goal that includes the party.
Mhm.
And it's kind of been like separating the game from like him and his goals and what the party is doing. So I said, try to incorporate the party in your own personal goals because that'll help drive the story as a group and your own motives a lot more to mesh with the players. Uh, so I do think it's really important to give players things to improve on as you continue to play with them.
Yeah, one of the things we had talked about was helping players to speak in first person instead of third
Mm-hmm.
person.
Yeah,
Um, I'll be honest with you. I mean, for my players, I really don't particularly care which one they speak in. I'll explain to them though. It's more immersive. You'll get more immersive into the game and into the game world if you speak in first person instead of third person. One
yeah,
thing I also try to get my players to do is and and this is hard for new players, and I get that because you're thinking of yourself as an individual. You're trying just hard enough to learn the game, let alone think of yourself as part of a group. But one of the things I try to have all my players do, but especially new players, is to don't always tell me what you're doing, what you're going to
exactly.
do. Okay? Tell each
Do
other,
yeah,
talk to
yeah,
your group,
interact with each other.
right?
Yeah, and so I, as much as I love the first person conversations, there's always the time for the third. I think a lot of it is trying to teach players the difference in noticing when each are appropriate, right? Because if I'm interacting with you as a town guards and I'm like, halt, what's your business in the town, right? I want you to like I'm visibly talking as the town's guardman. Now, if I'm like, hey, you guys have 3 or 4 days before you got to go meet the queen, what would you like to do? Well, I'm going to go ahead and have my character do. All right, that's a third
Mm,
person
okay.
scenario to tell me what your character is going to be doing. So there's moments for both, and it's as much as it is to teach a player to first person, which is the harder one,
Hmm.
and you do get the players that in a first person conversation will continuously talk in third, but it is a lot about trying to teach them when each is appropriate and using the correct one.
Yeah, it's very difficult and it's just very awkward when you're talking to your players, like using your example as a town guard and you're speaking in first person and they're like, well, Gregor is going to say to this guard,
Yeah,
and okay, new player or player, doesn't matter if they're new or not, and this is a kind of a private conversation. It's like, I need you to understand that you're kind of breaking the immersion and the
yeah,
flow of the conversation. And I don't expect my players to do voices or
no,
accents. I don't expect them to do any of that. I try to do that to differentiate because obviously, I mean, as DMs, we have many more characters we have to play than they do. So I try very hard to do voices for them or do inflections or something. But the only thing I ask them to do is please try to, as much as you can, speak in first person instead of third.
yeah,
Yeah,
I agree. It
that's it.
helps a lot.
Yeah, it does. So, well, Jeremy, I think we've covered everything in our
Yeah.
notes. I'm looking here. I can't think of anything else that or I don't see anything that we have missed. Do you have any final comments about anything we've talked about here?
I think the last comment I had was and I forgot to bring this up when we were talking earlier. When doing the one-on-one with somebody for a session zero, like the pre-session zero, and I bring a veteran player in, uh, one of the other, like, I was kind of going over the benefits of having a veteran player come in and help you teach a new player how to build a character and the relationships that it kind of builds. One of the other benefits that I think has really helped my veteran players in these scenarios is it gets them a lot more comfortable with helping and managing a new player, which tends to give them a little bit more confidence to want to run their own game. And I think as a
Yeah.
DM, it's a lot of your job to have fun and stuff like that, but to teach the players how to play better. But if you can teach them to want to DM as well, that's a really, really cool thing. And if you can do these little moments like that that give them a little bit more experience with it, even in a small bit, it can build up their confidence enough to where they start running their own games.
I remember us talking about that, and I'd forgotten that, and I think that is a
Becca. Yeah, Becca calling me out.
yeah. You just want someone to take over so you can play.
I've been a forever
That's awesome.
DM for 20 years, okay,
Oh,
Becca? I want
dude,
somebody.
man,
Uh,
I am with you. I would love it if one of my players would even just do a one shot. I mean, to even get to play a first level character so I
yeah.
could play a character would be so awesome. So if any of my players are watching, I would love it if you if you guys would offer just. I don't care if we're just exploring a cave. I don't care if we're
Sometimes.
just exploring a dungeon. You can make stuff up. I don't care. But just to get the opportunity to play in would be awesome. I'm looking at yeah, Becca. I did it for one of my forever DMs, and he was giddy the whole time. Hey, I get it.
I
I
get
would
it.
be
Yeah.
absolutely giddy if I ever got to play. It'd be so cool.
All right. So this has been our thoughts
Mm.
on how to make a TTRPG a great experience for new players, as well as some offshoots that
Yep.
happens in this stream.
Yep.
We'd love to hear from you guys. Please reach out to us on Twitter, leave a comment on the YouTube, chat with us in the stream. We love to communicate with you guys that way. We stream every other Sunday, so our next one's actually going to be on Mother's Day. So hopefully you guys can still make it. If not, catch us on YouTube afterwards.
Yep.
It'll be 8 p.m. the same time. And next week, it's going to be no, you can't do whatever you want in D&D.
As much
I'm
as you would
excited for
like
this
to.
topic.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
as much as you would like to. I'm
I'm
really
excited
excited
too.
about this topic.
Yeah. Me
The
too.
last thing I have is we're gonna have a link. I have a Kickstarter that I'm a part of, and it's gonna go live on Tuesday. I think I'm talking to the other partners that I have, and I'm going to see if I can get a giveaway for you guys for the Kickstarter that I will be a part of.
That would be great. That would be great. So, and we'll have the information for this Kickstarter on all of our socials. So everything that you see on the screen at Jeremy's Twitter,
Mimic.
at
Yep.
my personal Twitter, at the other side of the die Twitter, we will have all of that on there. And then on this video, when we get it on YouTube, I'll put it down in the show notes as well. Yeah. So, want to thank everybody for joining. Loved talking to you guys in the chat. Jeremy, as always, it was fun talking to you about our favorite hobby.
Yep.
And I guess I will see you in a couple of weeks.
Yep.
All
Thanks
right.
everybody.
All
Have a good
right.
evening.
Take care. Bye bye.